You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. There are a few housekeeping items, and I'll go ahead and walk us through them. We have several bills that the Judiciary Committee needs to see, and because these bills are all going to the same committee, staff tells me we can do one motion with these 4 bills for this committee. So I will move that Senate Bill 585, Senate Bill 793, Senate Bill 809, and Senate Bill 821 be re-referred to the Judiciary Committee. Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, all those, I'm sorry, please signify by saying aye on the docket, on the roll.
Mm-hmm. 12 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Senate, I would like a motion to re-refer Senate Bill 53 to Education and Health. Thank you. Motion is before us for a re-referral. Please go up on the board.
$11 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Senate Bill 53 is re-referred. I would like a motion to re-refer Senate Bill 1, I'm sorry. I would like a motion at the request of the patron to strike Senate Bill 117. That is my bill. Could I have a motion to that effect? Thank you. Would you all go up on the board, please? Thank you.
12 ayes, 0 nays.
Very good. One other announcement. We have several alcohol bills in this parent committee to ensure that those bills get a very lengthy and robust conversation. We are sending them to a subcommittee, an ABC subcommittee. That subcommittee will be chaired by Senator Mason. The bills that will be moving to that subcommittee are Senate Bills 196, 298, 414, 441, 496, 497, 498, 676, 688, 689, 824, and 833. I don't need a motion to refer them to subcommittee, but Senator Mason can tell you when that subcommittee will be meeting. The members of the committee would be Senator Mason, Senator McPike, Senator Spruill, Senator Reeves, and Senator Cosgrove. The chair, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we will meet Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. Do we have a room yet? Subcommittee room 3. So that's Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock, subcommittee room 3. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll now begin our docket. Do I have any members here to present? I don't have any members here yet. Okay. Senator Marsden, there you are.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 412. Okay, thank you. Senate Bill 412 seeks to extend the amount of time that you can, that a protective services worker can do to do a child family assessment from 45 to 60 days. A number of these are you can, under current law, you can request a 15-day extension. They're almost routinely being requested, routinely being granted. They cover, and I'm sure the members of this committee recognize what they look into is notifying, they notify family of the assessment, notify non-custodial parent, interviews children in the home, assess sleep environments for children, make contacts with babysitters, assess protective capacities of the family, get supervisor approval of the assessment, conduct home visits, interview alleged victim child, interview parents, other involved caretakers, identify relatives and family supports, conduct a safety assessment, develop plan, make dispositional notifications, and document all of these activities. It does take a long time, especially in more rural areas where sometimes the travel times are up to 2 hours trying to get out to people. This bill comes from a study done by the Commission on Youth, of which Senator Favola had been the chair, and which I currently I'm just taking over. They tell me. And so at any rate, that's what the bill does. There is a small cost that can be absorbed by the agency to deal with this increased time frame, but we feel like it's good policy. It's been well vetted by the Commission and the Department of Social Services, and I ask that you pass the bill.
Members, do you have any questions? Do you have any speakers?
They're good?
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please go up on the board. There must be a technical problem.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
I'm going to come back more often.
Your bill passes. Thank you, Senator Marsden. Senator Reeves, would you like to go? Okay.
Morning, Madam Chair. Which one would you want to start with first?
I have 472 in front of me, but
All right, let's see.
Whatever your
472.
preference.
Oh, my little. Sorry about this, Madam Chair. My team member just reorganized my thing, and I don't really understand how he organized it. It looks nice.
Would you like to start with another bill?
Mark, no, I thought you were Mark. Hold on a second. Somewhere in here I have 472. Hold on, I got it. Somewhere. All right, I got it. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'm finally there.
It's quite all right.
Madam Chair, I have a substitute for the bill that came kind of in the last few days. David's got that. If we can get that out, I would move the substitute.
All those in favor of adopting the substitute, please signify by saying aye.
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 Madam Chair, this is the culmination of a bunch of work that all of us have been working on the last few years, along with Senator Mason. This is what I'm calling the caboose omnibus bill. The substitute before you, there was some concern on how we go about reintegrating these children into kinship care and taking them, and some of those things on termination of parental rights. All the stakeholders met in my office, and we've kind of worked all those in with Valerie and literally all the stakeholders again, and we have agreement. I believe we have total agreement on it, right, Carl? And everybody's good on it. I could be happy to run through the whole thing, but the basic gist of it is this. It takes recommendations 16, 17, 19, 22, and 27 from the JLARC report, summarizes those and puts them into code of the overall plan to reform foster care. So with that, Madam Chair, barring any questions or explanation of the substitute, of which I can have David kind of go through if we need it, I would make the motion that the bill pass.
Looks like you have some speakers lined up. Let me first ask my colleagues, do you have any questions of the patron?
If you need them, they're here.
Okay, since your speakers did take the time to come, we're happy to hear from them if they would like to speak.
Madam Chair, it's your committee. If you want to hear them speak, I don't, if I didn't do good enough explaining, I can absolutely have them come up, but
Okay, I would just like to hear one
Sure.
outside speaker.
Valerie, do you want to
Valerie?
come up first?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Valerie LaRue from the Virginia Poverty Law Center. And we have worked with Senator Reeves on the language of this bill. I had some concerns about it. Your staff redrafted it last night facilitating some of our concerns along with those of the department. And I think, in reading this very quickly, that I think those concerns are ameliorated by this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, and the amendment, we really should be looking at lines 31 to line 36. Is that, or are there additional?
So a lot of the changes are in the part that's in bold under number 2 on the page 8, beginning at 211. And those give a little bit more specificity to what the regulations of the board is supposed to promulgate in response to this bill would do, having to do with the oversight process for when a local department is filing a petition for termination or not filing a petition for termination and what they need to do. So the idea is that the department, the commissioner or designee would have eyes on the case before we got to that 15-month mark when the department was supposed to either file a petition for termination or specify why they were not filing one. So the idea is to get the department some oversight before we get to that point.
Sounds like a very good idea.
Thank you, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
it's very good. Okay, it looks like this has been well thought through. Certainly JLARC did a great job in studying it, so we're open for a motion. Motion has been made and seconded to report 472 as amended. This is the substitute we would be reporting. We adopted the substitute. So please open the roll.
Fourteen ayes, 0 nays.
Your bill as amended reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a list of the next bill I have in here. Do you have that? 501.
I have 501. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah. 501. And I guess 501 will have to be re-referred to finance as well.
Madam Chair, this has to do with trying to help our kids out in foster home not have to age out. And one of the things we found out was on the home studies, which you heard Senator Marston just talk about having some time to finish those, to expand those. This is also a way that we can help get more homes into the process for the ability to adopt or to foster care. And so it's a pretty simple bill. It just says home studies shall be completed by a local board, licensed child place agency, or other person who's completed the home study training program established by the board regulation. And Carl is going to set that up, and we're going to try to see if this will make a difference. And there's some other italicized language in there of how it's to be done. and if there are any exceptions, and the meeting requirement. And so that's what the bill is designed to do. So it gives Carl and his agency, they have to promulgate regulations to implement the provisions of it. And so it gives him the authority to do that.
And Carl is shaking his head in affirmation, so this must ease the burden. Senators, colleagues, do you have any questions of the patron?
I think David's giving me the high sign, Madam Chair.
Before I call on a senator, David May, did you have a question? Or-
Madam Chair, Senator Reeves, we just had 2 line amendments just to clean up a little bit the regulatory language in the second enactment to clarify that the regulations on this will have a fast track route. Basically, what we have is a new system in which persons will be authorized to conduct home studies, and the idea is to put a fast track regulation clause on here so they can get restrictions in place regarding the qualifications and any other requirements that they're going to impose that you need to meet in order to conduct these home studies. So it would be 2 line amendments. The first would be on line 64, after services, insert, open paren, the board, close paren. The second line amendment would be on line 65, after act, period, insert, the board's initial adoption of regulations necessary to implement the provisions of this act shall be exempt from the Administrative Process Act, except that the board shall provide an opportunity for public comment on the regulations prior to adoption.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of supporting the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody in opposition? Okay, the amendments are adopted. So now you have a bill that's amended. Senator Morrissey, you did have your hand up.
Briefly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Did you want to speak?
Yes, Senator Reeves, it seems like the gist of the bill, as I'm reading the italic portions, is that it expands the number of people that can do the home study.
Correct.
And though that expansion includes those folk that can take a course or a home study course on it. Can you just
Kind of why we're doing
explain that a
that?
little bit further?
Yeah, so what we found is part of the reasons that we have kids aging out is we just don't have enough, right? And we're trying to make sure that we have qualified, trained people in order to do that. And believe it or not, we didn't really have any regulations that set the standard for all of that, if you can believe it. And so that's why we're giving Carl and his organization the ability to start setting that regulatory environment up, because we didn't really have any standards, because I was like, well, what are the standards to do it? And I hate to say this, and Carl will say it was a deficiency in the system that we didn't have it. So we're going to set those standards, hopefully set them broad enough, but not too broad that we don't get the right people qualified into the system. But hopefully we get the right people to expand the system, to allow more folks and these kids to try to help the process. Does that make sense? I'm not clicking that clear this morning, but.
One final question.
Senator
And this is
Morrissey.
the first year that I've sat on this, so I'm trying to understand it. When you say we're concerned about people aging out, does that mean that they're in foster care, you want to get them into homes, you need more people that are able to go into these potential homes that can take a foster child, and you need trained folk to go in and do the home study of the receiving home?
I couldn't have said it. You said it better than I said, but that's
Got
it.
it.
You got it. You're
All right.
clicking.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a bill that's been amended and needs to be re-referred to finance before us. May I have a motion?
So move.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded, and we would be re-referring this to finance. Clerk, please open the roll.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay.
When you come on to new committees,
Senator
sometimes
Reeves,
there's
would
a steep
you
curve.
like to do 502?
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, what I'd like to do is 502 was a bill, or is a bill, to help make sure that folks that are due child support get those monies on time. And I've had a lengthy conversation with the folks that run that here for the state. I thought it was a phenomenal business meeting with them, and we've identified some issues. And so what I'd like to do, Madam Chair, at your permission, is to have you, as the chair, write a letter to JLARC to see if we can study this issue. It's a prevalent issue with regard to late payments, and it's not always our department. We can have them come up and talk about their efficiency and effectiveness, but the bottom line is we need a study. There was a study done, how many years ago? Yeah, late 90s, about child support payments and such. We need to update that. There's some deficiencies in that bureau. Their software is, how many years old is it? 28 years old, Madam Chair. We can't even get people to service it. And the one person that can service the software, if they retire, they won't be able to function. So, I mean, it's a critical issue. And so what I'd like to do is kind of be a dog on the bone on this, see if we can get it to JLARC for a study. If JLARC won't take it up, then this committee I know is capable of taking it up, as we've done other issues, and we'll help child support their organization kind of get their.
So it is too late for a formal study request at this
It-
point.
it is,
You're
but-
asking me to do a letter to the department. Do you have a department rep here who can
Sure.
stand up and comment on a request you're making of this committee?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Craig Bersham. I'm the Deputy Commissioner over State Programs for the department. Of course, we always welcome a study of the Child Support Division and the Department of Social Services. I will just say on this issue, we process 99.9% of payments that we receive, as 3.9 million payments were properly identified on incoming child support orders within 2 business days. That's a requirement of the existing state law and the federal law. And so I think we do a pretty good job. I think what maybe some of those delays is the processing after we disperse the money through ACH and the banking system. So that may add an additional couple days. We are in talks with how to improve that process with Treasury as they handle the ACH process. But to the point, we do have a 28-year-old child support system. We were the second oldest certified system in the nation. And
Okay, so you would be open to a letter from this committee and able to respond? This will not be going to finance if I send a letter to the committee, to you.
we certainly have no objection to that.
Okay, all right. Is there another, did you wish to comment? sir?
He's from JLARC, so.
Only if it'd be useful.
But the only thing he's going to tell you is there's already resolutions that have gone. They haven't put the members on the JLARC to decide what bills are going to go through that at this point. So what did you say, we got 20?
Yeah, in the various rules committee, I believe the last time I looked, there's 25, 26 study resolutions already in those two rules committees. And so there's already kind of some things in the queue potentially for us to look at. So I just want to make sure that the committee was aware of that there's
So that's.
quite a bit of study topics
That's
potentially
probably
on
why
the
you're
table.
asking for a letter.
Correct.
Because JLARC seems to have a very robust plate.
So we would just need to accommodate that consistently.
Let me ask staff, what would be the appropriate action on this bill? Do I carry it over, continue it? Okay. I would like a motion to
Madam
continue
Chair,
this
I'll
bill.
move that we continue Senate Bill 502 over to next year with a letter from the chair to JLARC asking for a study on this issue.
All those in favor, please, will the clerk please open the roll?
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, Senator
Madam
Reeves.
Chair.
Thank you. Senator Spruill. Yes, you may go next.
Madam Chair and members of the commission, committee, Senate Bill 624.
Okay.
624 is a condition relief geriatric prisoner, allowing any person serving a sentence imposed upon a conviction for a felony offense other than a first class 1 felony who is 55 years old of age and older and has served at least 15 years of the sentence imposed. Is 50 years old of age, older, and served at least 20 years of the sentence imposed. Petition to parole board for conditional release. Virginia no longer has a discretionary parole. Offenders who receive good time credit will serve a minimum of 85% of their sentence. The JLOC Commission recently published a report on the rising cost of inmates' health care among the aging population. According to JLOC, the percentage of inmates served at the age of 55 has more than doubled in the last 10 years. In 2017, inmates over the age of 55 account for about 12% of the Virginia Department of Correction population, but 33% of the off-site of prescription drug spending. This bill will allow the most costly and sick offenders to be considered for parole by the Virginia Parole Board. This bill will help reduce costs and ensure the safety of the public. Governor Northam included a $155,000 fiscal impact for 2021 and $195,000 for 2022 for 5 additional part-time parole examiners at the parole board to prepare a new case file and interview newly eligible offenders. Madam Chairman, I also have someone from the parole board to speak, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Let me first ask
Yes,
my
ma'am.
colleagues if they have any questions of the patron. Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
You know, I'm probably one of these guys that recovered on this because I'm getting so old, but didn't we just do a bill like this?
We did a similar bill, and it had to do with sort of a geriatric, a state of medical condition. This has to do with age. But yes, it was similar, and this also has, other than a Class 1 felony, the other bill we amended.
Madam Chair, the other bill dealt with not only geriatric release, but also with disabilities, and we had a long discussion regarding disabilities. This bill, Senator Spruill's, as well as the other one, has the Class 1 felony language in it that I took umbrage with.
Thank you.
So they're not exact, but they're similar.
Madam Chair, this is the administration bill. by the way.
Okay, thank you, Senator Spruill. We will now take speakers.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. I'm Linda Bryant. I'm one of the members of the Virginia Parole Board. Secretary Moran, as well as the Chairwoman Bennett, are now over in House Public Safety dealing with some bills there. J.K. Davenport is here from the Secretary's office, the Deputy Secretary. This is a governor's bill. This is a bill that the Parole Board has been studying for about 2 years. And the Senator stated the bill. Right now, geriatric parole eligibility only kicks in at the age of 60. You have to serve 5 years at 60, 5 years at 60 and 5 years at 65 and 10 years at 60. This would essentially reduce the age where you're considered geriatric to the age of 50. That actually mirrors the term geriatric and the definition of geriatric for the correctional healthcare world. So the National Commission on Correctional Health Care, they define geriatric as starting at the age of 50. So what this bill does is it says that you will become eligible for geriatric parole consideration only, not release, but consideration only at the age of 50. After you have to have served 20 years. And you'll be eligible for geriatric consideration only at the age of 55 if you've served 15 years. And then the age of 60 will remain the same as it is currently under the law, and 65 will remain the same as it is currently under the law. In the past 3 years, leading up to last year, we released, the parole board granted parole to about 3% of people under the geriatric provision as it stands currently. That totaled to about 50 people that saved the Department of Corrections a minimum of about $9 million, and the rough estimate, more accurate cost, is about $27 million, because what we're dealing with is the most expensive population. So the governor the Secretary's office, we worked with the National Governors Association. There was a parole commission on best practices around the country and model legislation that we looked at for the period for about a year. And this was one of the proposals. This was also recommended in the J-LARC Commission study on healthcare. It's a proposal that makes sense. It's both fair, just, but also it's a huge way to help control these unsustainable medical costs.
Madam Chair.
There's a question. Okay.
Ma'am, if you could just stay there. Out of the
Senator Reeves.
3% geriatric, 50 people you said were released, is that correct?
Approximately. I'd want to say anywhere from 50 to 60.
And out of those 50 or 60 people, how many were convicted of, under the code section 18267.5, which is a forcible sexual
Right.
sodomy and that?
So what I can tell you is that it's very hard to pick out one case or one type of case, because I can think in terms of crime. I was a prosecutor for about 18 years, and so my mind works in terms of crimes against children, crimes against this kind of thing. And I can say that generally speaking, these crimes against children, they're not people are not really getting released that much on geriatric parole as it stands. So I can't give you an exact number. I'd have to go back and pull those.
Well, I guess my concern is, if we're dropping the age to 50 and the advances in medical technology for especially males,
right.
My concern is, let's say out of those 50 to 60 people that you just released, how many have reoffended?
Our recidivism rate is less than 1%. So as you know, DOC's recidivism rate is the best in the country. The number of people that recidivate on parole that we've released is less than 1%. So our process, and I believe Chairwoman Bennett spoke to this a couple days ago, but we have 13 parole examiners, 7 investigators. We have the former 3rd highest ranking officer from the Virginia State Police. We do some serious background work before we decide to release. Even if we're thinking of possibly releasing, we do some serious background work. We have the staff to do that. We would need, more if this bill were to pass, but we're doing our due diligence. We're reaching out to the victim, even going beyond what the statute requires, to find people, to make sure we get their input. And often, frankly, the victim input changes our position. We may be inclined to grant because someone's done everything really well, no infractions over the last 20 years. They were 17 when the offense took place, and now they're 50. But we really work hard to get this right. So, but our recidivism rate is extremely low, and it's one, frankly, we're proud of. The staff, the parole board is equipped to handle these types of background investigations. I don't want to put too much on the record here, but would be happy to talk to anyone about that. But we do a very deep dive into the intelligence gathering before we release people.
Madam Chair.
Senator Reeves, I do have a few senators waiting to speak, and are there other administration spokespeople? Okay. May I take this speaker, and then you can...
Sure, I was just going to say, I would welcome that. I'm not sure where I'm at on this bill, but I might throw up in the stand just to...
You now have the
Madam
floor.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is J.K. Davenport. I'm Deputy Secretary in Public Safety and Homeland Security. The only thing I'd like to add is that in 1990, the age of offenders over the age of 50 was about 800, and in 2018, it's over 8,000, and it is forecasted to continue to increase. So it's not just the population that's currently in DOC, but the new people that are coming in at an older age with longer sentences. And if we are able to release those whose release would be consistent with public safety, the resources then can be directed towards those really difficult population, because this also makes reentry very difficult as well. And so I just wanted to add that additional background information. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I would hope that the two administration spokespeople can stay, and I will call on Senator Kiggins, and then Senator Cosgrove, Senator Morrissey, and then Senator Boysko. So Senator Kiggins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak to the definition of geriatric. So I'm a geriatric nurse practitioner. In the medical field, we use the age of 65 and above as classification for geriatric. And with aging of America and just improvements in healthcare, and people are living longer. So even in my opinion, 65 is technically, I use that term lightly, geriatric. So at the age of 50, calling 50 geriatric is, I kind of take a little bit of an issue with that. And you said, people are older age with longer sentences. Well, that just kind of proves that people are living longer, they're living healthier, they're living well into their 80s and 90s and very high functioning. I have a question about the term conditional release. Is that the same as parole then?
Yes, it's basically, when parole was in place, you'd be released on parole, but now it's just conditional parole. So you have to meet the conditions to be able then to be eligible for parole.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Cosgrove, and then Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yep, it's on. I guess a couple of questions. For Ms. Bryant, please. Ms. Bryant, we have, I believe we have bills before us that are reestablishing parole on a general basis. Is that correct? Is it?
That is correct.
All right. So you're already going to have a vehicle just via parole to do what you're planning to do here. And I guess the second thing is I want you to look at the patron, Senator Spruill.
Yes, sir.
Now, no, I'm talking to her. I just wanted her to look at you.
Oh.
Yeah. He's 106 years old, okay? But he's strong as a horse, okay? So I'm a little concerned the age of 50, even 55. Look, I'm 65, and I'm not doing too bad. This just seems just a little more than what we need to be doing, especially defining this as geriatric release.
John, but you're not sick either. You're not badly sick. Your health is 65, but you're not sick at 65.
That's true, but I guess it could get sick later.
Okay, we understand your
All right, thanks.
line of questioning. Senator Morrissey, and then Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank Senator Spruill and the administration. I'm going to support this bill. I'm going to make a suggested change in a moment, but it shows compassion and it shows mercy, and that's important. And also, when we consider these bills, I think that people tend to think that it means when they're 50 or 55 or 60 or 65, they're getting out. And I want to emphasize that it's simply they're eligible. The parole board can consider them. It's not a exit pass. The other thing, though, that I want to focus on is something that Ms. Davenport said, and I'll ask either you, Ms. Bryant, or Ms. Davenport. You gave us a statistic that in 1990 there were 800 people that were eligible. Now it's 2020, 30 years later, and there's 8,000.
No, I'm sorry. What I meant was in 1990 of the DOC population, there were a little bit over 800 people who were over the age of 50.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's over the age. Do you mean that would be eligible under this bill?
No, the age.
Okay.
The age, yeah.
Yes.
If I got it right, you said in 1990 there were 800 people, population at that age. Now there's 2020, 30 years later, 8,000.
That was 2018, yes.
Okay, and let's be clear, because we have abolished parole. That's why it's increased that much. Here's the problem that I have. This bill and the other one had the verbiage in there other than a Class 1 felony, and I don't understand why. Ms. Bryant, you are a former prosecutor. 30 years ago, when I was Commonwealth's attorney, I had Clarence Jackson into my staff and explained to the assistants those people that were least likely to become recidivists. The folks that were least likely to become recidivists were people that had been convicted of first-degree murder. Were you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of that statistic, no, sir.
Why do you take that category Class 1? You can have somebody convicted of, as you know, of first-degree murder as a principal in the second degree that happened to be a driver in a car. Why why do you carve out Class 1 felons from these people who are eligible for, to be eligible for geriatric release? I don't get it. Can you explain that to me?
So I think the legislative process is full of compromises.
Okay.
I really can't speak to why the statute is the way it is. Our focus was to not try to change the nature of the statute, but focus on
Sure,
the
okay,
age
fair
piece
enough.
of it.
Would you agree with me, though, in your experience, that some of the people least likely to become recidivists are indeed people that have been convicted of a Class 1 felony, to wit, first-degree murder?
I would be happy to discuss the matter with you afterwards. I'm a little uncomfortable giving my personal position
All right,
on it. Thank you.
that's fair enough. Madam Chair, when it's appropriate, if I can make an amendment to this legislation, propose an amendment.
Let me ask Senator Boysko, she has her speaking request in. Perhaps after Senator Boysko asks her question, you can offer an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Ms. Bryant. Could you explain to us what happens with the person if they are given conditional release as far as when they go back out into the population? I know we're looking at people who have done violent things, and
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to hear from you about what kind of.
So they're released on intensive supervision, and they're monitored in the community through their probation and parole officers, and it's pretty strict. And then we defer, basically, we don't want to micromanage the supervision because there are so many people that the departments have to manage, and that number is just continuing to increase. But they are supervised in the community. And then if they violate a term, so for example, if somebody doesn't show up for an appointment with their probation officer, or they test positive, then we issue a warrant. We basically violate them, and they come back into the prison system. And then they will be looking at serving the remainder of their time, or the remainder of their time for which was over their head when they were released.
Madam Chair, one more question. So as Senator Cosgrove mentioned, there are other bills that are considering reinstating parole.
Yes, ma'am.
What would happen with this bill if we were to pass just a full reinstatement of parole?
So
if this is passed?
Well, I believe if this passed and that passed, my sense is, just deferring to the chairwoman, that it may all get sent to conference and discussed. I'm not really sure, but there would be no need for this bill if the other bill passed. But I don't believe, but our position is we are here as part of the governor's support of this bill.
I can ask staff, do you want to explain what would happen if both bills passed? My understanding is if they're amending the same section of the code, they'd go into conference, but I will defer to staff.
Madam Chair, so if both of the bills passed, there would be no opportunity at that point for conference. It would have to be something to where we recognize down the road as we approach the final stretch. We've got two bills that are looking promising. Let's figure out a solution. But I will say, and I'll defer to the administration on this, I don't know that the bills necessarily conflict with one another so much as maybe this bill may not be totally necessary if a parole is reinstated.
If the earlier one passes, I think it's something we will deal with later on in the legislative process. But the intent, obviously, has already passed in one other bill. This will be a second vehicle. It is not the first time a second vehicle will be acted on for this relatively the same purpose. Senator Morrissey, did you have an amendment you wanted to offer?
I do, Madam Chair. I consider it a friendly amendment. Again, kudos to the senator for proposing this legislation. My amendment is on line 47, staff, and it would delete after the word offense, comma, other than a Class 1 felony, comma.
Madam Chair?
Yes, does the patron view that as a friendly amendment?
I talked with the staff folks, and they prefer that the administration like it the way it is now. So I agree with him myself, but I put the bill in at the will of the administration. and the staff's administration like it the way it is now.
Okay, I'm going to ask staff to read the amendment again.
Madam Chair, the amendment would be on line 47, after offense, strike, comma, other than a Class 1 felony, comma.
So in effect, we'd be including all felonies.
Madam Chair, that would be correct. There would be no prohibition
No,
on offering.
there's no carve-out,
There's no carve-out.
just so we're clear. That's the amendment. Is there a second? Okay. Guess the amendment dies for lack of a second. So,
Madam Chair?
yes, Senator Hanger.
Well, in speaking to that, I actually agree with Senator Morrissey on that, but I think, in my opinion, that may be the reluctance of others. I believe this bill is a good step in terms of, I mentioned last week that I had worked on this a number of years ago, and the political weight of, at that time, wouldn't have allowed that amendment. And right now, it makes it a little heavier for Senator Sproul to carry, I believe, and perhaps would be heavy enough that it wouldn't quite get where it needs to go. So that I just say I appreciate the comment that Senator Marcy made. I think he's on target, but I don't believe it may be good for us to have an accounting of the population we're actually talking about. Those people that are in that age category that have the Class 1 felony, and see the nature of those individuals and who would be eligible.
Perhaps we
Chair.
could get additional information as the bill
Madam
moves through
Chair,
the
I don't
process.
feel
Senator
bad at all,
Sproul?
sir. All my bills are too heavy for me to carry.
Okay, colleagues, I need a motion. Okay, motion. Yep. Motion
Yes.
has been made to report and re-refer the bill to finance, and there is a second. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Nine ayes, 5 nays.
Senator Sproul, do you have any other bills?
I believe that's all,
I don't see
Madam
any
Chair. Yeah.
on this docket.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. How about Senator McPike? Would you be willing to present?
Madam Chair, we'll start with Senate Bill 391, and we'll take them in order if that works for you.
I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill 391, this changes the code section for mandatory financial reporting of suspected abuse of elders or incapacitated adults. For those on the committee last year, you've seen this piece of legislation. As you've seen, if you look at the code section that currently exists, there are a number of mandatory reporters from first responders, firefighters, mental health professionals, guardians, conservators of an adult, including all the way down to companion, chore, homemakers, caregivers. There's a fairly wide swath of current folks that are required to report. Under our current statute, financial institutions are a may, not a shall. We have a whole host of folks that are a shall category. And I would suggest that one of the more important part of both elderly and incapacitated adults' life is their financial well-being. And the reason why I'm bringing this forward, because there's been JLARC reports over the last couple of years, as well as NCSL and statewide reports on the significant financial loss of these adults. And it's unfortunate because small amounts, whether it be 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, these are critical amounts in people's lives. And we've seen the increased number of scams of those who hold power of persuasion, who coerce these folks into financial transactions. And so we already set out into the code a number of key people that interact with these seniors, these incapacitated adults, who have the insight and knowledge to suspect something's going on and to simply make a report. There's already provided civil immunity for those actions that are covered under our statutes. There's a series of federal laws as well that provide umbrellas of protections for financial institutions. We have now a majority of states in the United States that require mandatory reporting. Virginia, unfortunately, we have a history of being very slow to act. We had some pretty significant legislation this week, which began to catch Virginia up to others in terms of constitutional amendments and some other things. This is an area that we've been lagging behind, and I'd suggest to the body that financial institutions are one of the most important lifelines to the well-being of these incapacitated adults and seniors. And it's time that we also include financial institutions as part of the mandatory reporting. There's been significant national study on the impacts. There's been significant study on the financial impacts to Virginians, and it's time we move them into the mandatory reporting. And I know there's some friends here to speak in opposition to it this morning, that the sky is falling and several other things, but it's simply not true. These same institutions already operate in dozens of states that have these requirements. And guess what? They didn't go out of business. It's just time that Virginia changed and we do the right thing for these adults, where we have key components and key individuals that could make such a significant impact on our seniors and incapacitated adults, and ask the committee act favorably, and certainly looking forward to the comments here this morning on the bill.
Thank you, Senator McPike. Colleagues, do you have any questions of the patron? Okay, we'd like to hear your speakers.
Chair, members, and members of the committee, my name is Emily Hardy. I'm the elder law attorney with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, and we're here in support of the bill. And we support this bill as the banks are the first line of defense for older adults. They're often the ones that see the financial exploitation at a time in which it can be stopped. And with earlier detection, we can help protect the small amount of assets that people in poverty have, because often it's impossible to get those assets back once they're taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, my name is Carter Harrison. I'm with the Alzheimer's Association, and we also support the bill for reasons that the previous speaker mentioned. Obviously, for people with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, they are more susceptible to this, and we have been supporting the increased efforts over the years, and I think ultimately a bill like this is probably where we're going to head to try to stop as much of this abuse that occurs as possible, as soon as possible, to protect as much assets as possible. So thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm Peggy Friedenberg with AARP. I have personal experience with financial exploitation, and we as an organization support this bill.
Thank you. Are there other speakers?
I believe in the opposed category this morning.
I gathered.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Matt Bruning with Virginia Bankers Association. There is no doubt that this is a terrible and unfortunately growing issue. And we want to thank the General Assembly for the action you took last year to provide us some more tools through legislation to allow financial institutions to hold or refuse transactions when there is a good faith belief that elder financial exploitation is occurring. We understand financial institutions, as was mentioned by one of the speakers, are at the front line, and we are committed to protecting our customers. The stories I hear from our bankers are heartbreaking, especially since the majority of these are usually involve a family member or close relation of the consumer. That being said, we do not believe the Senator's bill is the right approach. Financial institutions, according to APS's latest available information, provided over 2,500 voluntary reports of suspected exploitation. That's more than nurses, physicians, law enforcement, or EMS and fire department personnel. We're doing our part, both at the state and federal level, where we report suspicious activities to the Financial Crimes Network. Making reporting mandatory takes away the flexibility to best assess the situation. Unlike other mandatory reporters, this requirement falls on our frontline staff, currently, usually the tellers, to make a cognitive assessment of a customer for which they may not be trained and for which the interaction may take mere seconds. With the threat of civil penalties, that puts them in an impossible situation. We are concerned that by mandating reporting, this will cause our members to over-report, putting further strain on an already stretched thin APS personnel. Our members work in their communities with APS, law enforcement, and other organizations to educate consumers about preventing elder financial exploitation. Last year, the VBA held training for bank employees to take back to their bank and train the frontline staff, and had representatives from law enforcement, APS, and law firms discuss identifying and reporting to a packed room of bank employees. So we support collaborative efforts to address this issue. Unfortunately, we believe this bill will not solve the problem, and we oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clement, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Wick Clement with the law firm Hunt and Andrews Kurth, here on behalf of the Virginia Credit Union League. We appreciate Senator Pike's efforts to address this problem that we know is endemic in our society as people age. The only thing I would point out to you, in addition to the remarks of Mr. Bruning, is this. If you look at the current law, on the first page. The categories where there is mandatory reporting, beginning on line 20, 1, 2, and 3, those folks all have training. They have the background in this area. And so it makes sense to impose an obligation and a civil penalty on them. And then you look at 4, 5, and 6. Those folks all have familiarity with the person who may be being taken advantage of. They have a personal relationship with that person who is allegedly being taken advantage of. And then number 7 is law enforcement officers. And again, they are exposed in many difficult situations with people, including financial exploitation and people being abused in their homes. Financial institution staff, we can all think of an example where you go in to see a teller, and it's the first time you've encountered that person. That makes it difficult. That's why credit unions and banks are concerned about imposing a civil penalty on a well-meaning person trying to serve that customer. There are some in the definition on the very last line. It may be that some of those financial institutions defined on lines 152 to 154. If you look at those specific categories, there are some of those institutions that develop a personal relationship. Banks and credit unions really don't have that opportunity. It's really more of a proposition of hit or miss. So as sympathetic, and one other point. Virginia allows an individual to sign a power of attorney that survives a disability. So you can go into a bank or a credit union and say, I am the agent for so-and-so, here's a power of attorney. That, I would submit, in my experiences, is a more likely event where someone will be taken advantage of. Not the person herself or himself who may go to a teller and may be bruises on the arm, or you're not sure the person is speaking exactly cogently. So as sympathetic as we are to this national problem, credit unions like banks have their own sessions where they do try to educate these tellers to spot situations of abuse. But to mandate this and to impose a civil penalty to us is an overreach. It's an issue that we will continue to address. Large credit unions and small credit unions, when they come to annual conferences, we have sessions on this to try to spot these situations. So as well-meaning as this bill is, we would respectfully submit that insofar as credit unions and banks are concerned, it's too broad. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Boysko and then Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. For the patron of the bill, first I would like to say that in 1986, when I was after my freshman year in college, I was a bank teller and received minimum wage and had no training in any of this. So I would be apt to be hesitant to want to be responsible for taking this role on. But my question for you is, what other states have implemented this and what has been the experience there? Because you did mention that it has been already.
Sure. Madam Chair, I'd submit North Carolina, Arkansas, California, Colorado, let's see, Delaware. The list goes on, and is substantial. Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana. I mean, I can go on and on and on. There are dozens and dozens of states that have this requirement.
And Madam Chair, follow-up question?
Senator Boysko.
And have there been reports of problems with
No.
the other states? Are there any documented? Can anyone in the room tell me any documented?
So, Madam Chair, first off, there's a layer of both protections, both this legislation and mirrored in other legislation. There is civil immunity absent gross neglect of the actors involved. That is a very common thread across all this legislation. This is true for this one as well. And so both the Senior Safe Act federally, as well as, for instance, transmitting federally data is protected. It's allowable in terms of communicating to other parties. So there are levels of federal protection that are in place for these financial institutions that spoke here today, as well as in our own code, protections for them, just like the other mandatory reporters. So they are covered by multiple layers of protection. You heard others saying that there would be some sort of adverse action. It is still a good faith, but if you know something that you suspect, you should report it. It's pretty simple. And in terms of the compensation, under the code, remember that we have thousands of volunteer firefighters and EMS personnel that don't get a nickel, that are already mandatory reporters. And so we're talking about those who are bank tellers and others and other financial institutions. We're talking about those collectively in our community that have the most important interactions with people's lives. And it might be just for a few moments, like a first responder, or in fact, it might be a caregiver or other long-term sort of condition. So the financial is one of the most important elements of a person's life. And right now, they're not mandatory reporters.
Senator Reeves.
Madam Chair, speaking of the bill, Senator McPuck, I appreciate you bringing this bill, and I'm probably one of the few people up here that's actually still certified as a banker and also serves as a police officer or worked a crime like this. So I'd like to tell just a quick story about an exploitation like this that happened where the gentleman had Alzheimer's, and he took in a niece who was unscrupulous, who every day went and took money out of the account with the gentleman in the rear of the car to the same teller till they sucked down $165,000 of this man's money. And as a bank certified agent with State Farm Bank, we already do this training. I have to go through continuing education every year to look at financial matters. And there is a common sense element to this. And like Senator McPike is saying, he's just making sure they do report it because somebody needs to do it, because that was one case for me, and I know we had multiple cases of certain things like that where objects are just out of the house at that point and all these sort of things, and people do take advantage of these folks, and they'll squat in their houses and all these other things. So we've had it in my own agency where I've had the same thing happen. We caught it early. We got people involved, and the Stafford Sheriff's Department arrested the folks. So and I hire frontline people all day long, but there's mandatory training that they have to go through via internet and all these other things. So I'm going to throw up a yes, because I think it's due.
All right, there are two more senators in the queue, and then we'll entertain a motion. Senator Kiggins and Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about the bill. Can you define financial exploitation? Is that a certain monetary amount of money, or what are some of the things you're looking for that would red flag a customer?
Madam Chair, there's not a financial limit. The code used to have that. That was removed several years ago in legislation. The previous legislation threshold was $50,000. That was removed in, I believe, 2017 as a threshold. Council can correct me, but.
Mr. May.
Madam Chair, Senator McPike, I'm not sure the exact time in which we removed the said limit. I will say that the term financial exploitation is defined in the bill. It was previously defined in this section, and we moved it down to now new subsection L because of the new structure of making them a mandatory reporter. But the term is defined.
Okay, thank you.
But not a dollar threshold. It's resources, other sort of
Gotcha.
framework within that.
And I too agree, just with my experience in geriatrics, it's a collaborative group effort and community effort. I'm not super excited to find people, but I don't think anyone is. I mean, there's so many people that can be held accountable if this type of financial abuse is occurring. But it is absolutely, we need kind of more eyes on the field and more people looking out for our older adults who are suffering from cognitive impairment and dementia.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator McPike, looking under the financial institution staff means any employee, agent, or so-and-so. It also includes loan associations. So would this include payday lenders and title lenders?
Madam Chair, I'd have to rely on counsel as to whether or not the definition of code of a loan association tracks through to a payday lender. I'm not sure.
Mr.
Of
May.
that specific definition in our code.
Madam Chair, I would have to do a code search to see if we find the term loan association. I'm sure our folks over there could tell us very quickly if a loan association would include the payday lender.
Madam Chair, Senator Cosgrove, you're looking at the definition of financial institution staff. I don't think loan association applies to the payday lenders. I think if you look on the next line, consumer finance companies is, I'm not exactly sure on 6.2, where folks are specifically defined, but that might encompass some of those folks. But loan association is a different term than the payday lenders.
Okay. Madam Chairman, the only reason I asked
Senator
is,
Cosgrove.
we had mentioned bruises on the arms. We would probably have to look for shark bites from, the payday lenders. So.
Right. Very good. Okay, the bill is before us. It does not have to go to finance. There are no amendments, so I will wait for the
Move to
committee's
report.
pleasure. Motion has been made to report, and it has been seconded. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Seven ayes, 6 nays, 1 abstention.
The bill passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next bill is Senate Bill 393. This bill, this committee was also familiar with last year. This requires and sets out a framework to require a couple things, one of which is the testing for lead in child care facilities as defined in the code. It also provides an opt-out or options for those child care facilities. If they choose not to implement a testing plan and submit it to the agency, they also can provide notice and provide bottled water as an option. So the basic data tells us that lead impacts neurological development. Right now, we have no standards whatsoever for child care facilities. As you might recall, we've passed the first lead testing standard in 2017 for our schools. This now applies a testing standard as well as gives an opt-out for those child care facilities to provide notice to the parents, as well as bottled water or other drinking water that meets the U.S. Food and Drug Administration standard for bottled water. So there's various options that they can do should they choose not to do the lead water testing standard. But it really is an effort to start to identify some of the sources in these facilities that could be introducing lead into the consumable drinking water. I think as parents, we don't want lead in a formula mix or anything else that's fed to our young ones. So this is an effort that would really start to combat that, increase the awareness, and eliminate lead water sources in these important facilities. Happy to address questions of the committee.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for the patron? Are there any speakers who would like to speak to the bill?
Good morning. I'm Emily Griffey with Voices for Virginia's Children. We support this measure. As you know, young children are even more impacted by the potential of lead poisoning than school-aged children, and this is a smart measure. Thank you for carrying this legislation.
Thank you for your comment. Senator Cosgrove.
Just, Jeremy, what kind of testing is available for the, just daycare type of center? I mean, is there a fairly simple test to get done?
So, Madam Chair and members, Senator Cosgrove, there are some additional kits that you can do. There's a testing procedure to cap off. You'd fill it you'd shut off the device the previous night, you test in the morning. There's a 3T standards, there's other EPA standards in our drinking water office, provide some guidance on their website on how to do it and protocols. There's testing companies that can support that. And then there's also the 3Ts protocols that's been used in our school systems as well, in terms of if you do hit thresholds, how to assess it, how to retest it to clear that facility. A lot of times it's the filter. If you have a faucet, it's actually the screen and filter that's accumulated material, changing out. It's a $3 part. It's sort of increasing just the frequency of maintenance on units. Sometimes it does get into more complex things like solder joints, but there are ways to remediate it, and it's usually isolated to the faucet itself, which you can pick up, for 30 or 40 bucks at Home Depot or Lowe's.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the bill is before us. It does have to be re-referred to finance.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Fourteen ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next bill is Senate Bill 395. This bill strikes an existing provision in the code which laid out a requirement that an ABC licensee had to be a Virginia resident or reside within Virginia for 1 year. This was recently struck down by the court, and so this cleans up our code section in compliance with the courts, Madam Chair.
Right. I don't think anybody will have a problem with this, and you have no speakers. A motion was made to report. Is there a second? There's a second. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Fourteen ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Okay. We are moving right along. Senator Mason.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, we'll take up one near and dear to your heart, please, ma'am, Senate Bill 570.
Okay.
This comes to me thanks to the hard work that you've done, quite frankly, and the folks at the Commission on Youth and all of our advocates. Madam Chair, Senator Reeves just spoke about a little while ago. Last year, 576 children aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. And this is Ms. Atkinson spent an inordinate amount of time getting this through my thick head, but this is a very small subset. This deals with children that are currently in foster care with a relative or with fictive kin. And I know all the advocates and professionals behind me know, but fictive kin are unrelated by birth or marriage, but have an emotionally significant relationship with another that would take on the characteristics of a family relationship. I had to learn that over and over, so I thought I'd tell you. But if you want to go to line 440, what this does is lay out a path. So this is a child in foster care with a relative or fictive kin. And foster care is an arduous process. They work as hard as they can to streamline, but there may be some problems with this family staying in foster care. So this gives them the flexibility to have a kinship guardian program, which you see starting on line 440, excuse me. So it's just dealing with children in foster care, but they might need some more flexibility, and the family wants wants more flexibility, wants out of foster care, but we are doing everything we can to provide the flexibility to allow that child to stay in that environment. This would extend the resources they currently get under foster care to this situation. The team has determined that last year this would have impacted 4 children. And in the future, it could be 9, 10 range is what they're estimating. It's my hope that in the future, it could be 40 or 50 range is what we're estimating. Our goal here is to keep children in a good environment, and if they need more flexibility, this bill is designed as a recommendation for the Commission on Youth to give it to them.
You did a very good job presenting. Senator Reeves, and then I see there's some people lined up to speak to the bill. Senator Reeves.
Senator Mason, I just have one question where on line 474, the amount not to exceed $2,000. I just was trying to understand where we derive that number from, and if that number needs to be adjusted, lowered, or set for inflation. Carl, you have a lifeline behind you too.
Sure, Madam Chairman, Senator Reeves, I always like to see the ceiling lifted off them, but I can answer the question, and that they get the same resources that they are getting today. And, the cap,
just curious.
Trained professional can tell us if you want to hear from Carl.
Mr. Ayers.
Thank you, Senator. Madam Chair, Senator Reeves, it is actually it's consistent with the federal code for a Title IV-E. The non-recurring expenses that Senator is speaking to is capped at $2,000. So this just keeps it standard between the state and the federal piece of it.
Thank you.
So this would be a state program for the guardianship.
Madam Chair, yes, this is a state program, but in order for us to operate it and keep it as consistent as we can, we just use the same amounts between the federal and the state program.
Yeah.
And the team's here to speak, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. We are happy you're here.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Allison Gilbreth with Voices for Virginia's Children. Currently, we know research shows that children do better when they're with kin. Right now, Virginia, the national average is 32%, and Virginia is only at about 6% of children who are entering foster care to go to be with kin. This bill will help us increase that population. Thank you.
Good morning. Cassie Cunningham with Children's Home Society. We also support the bill for the reasons previously stated.
Madam Chair, Valerie LaRue from Virginia Poverty Law Center, and we also support the bill for the reasons that have been stated. Thank you.
This is an excellent bill. It's been a good year in the making, and I'm really proud that we can vote on it. There's nobody in opposition, so we have to re-refer to finance.
Okay.
Is there anything? Is there anything else the patron would like to say?
Madam Chair, I believe Mr. May have a couple of amendments that I was unaware of that might tighten this thing up a little bit and make it better.
As he always does.
Okay, very good.
Madam Chair, I would move the substitute amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of the amendment in the nature of a substitute signify by saying aye. Aye. The chair heard a unanimous aye.
My apologies for the late notice, Madam Chair.
Is anybody opposed? Anybody opposed? Just wants to see it. Could we learn what? It's probably bringing it into conformance. Yeah.
Madam Chair, could we hear what the difference is?
Young man.
Just make sure everybody has a copy. Okay. If everybody has a copy of the amendment in the nature of a substitute, if you have it before you, I would like a description of the differences between the bill that was originally introduced and this substitute.
Madam Chair, so the differences in the substitute are technical. They came at the recommendation of the Virginia Supreme Court, and basically what they do is they insert a very similar amendment into both section 16.1-282, which you can see on lines 29 through 31, and in section 63.2-906, which you will see on lines 573 through 575. And they are just mirroring this language that we're using about fictive kin to accommodate that change in a couple more sections. We didn't initially think that we needed to amend these sections, but it's a fine change. The Supreme Court was more comfortable with it, so we went ahead and worked it into the bill.
So it sounds like they were technical amendments, is that correct? Okay. Are there any further questions of the patron? Okay, we refer to finance? Is there a second? Okay, will the clerk please open the roll? And we're reporting the amendment.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. And in what can only be considered a very smooth segue, Senate Bill 698 dealing with distilleries.
Oh, dear.
So, Madam Chair, members of the committee,
Point of order, Senator Cosgrove. This one was, I believe, let me check my list. I do not believe that was on my list, but I will double check. Okay.
Okay, cool.
No problem. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes,
So
Senator.
last year, you may remember Senator Peake did some really good work for distilleries. Distilleries are making their own product, but the way the system was set up, it was acting as if we were sending it to ABC. ABC was selling it and then sending a percentage back. So the distillers were having to send the money to ABC, wait a period of time, and get the money back when all this was transacting at the distillery at home, right? So we tried to figure out a way, and ABC said, hey, that makes complete sense. We'll set up a process to try to help you through that. And so if you see on line 47, they say if a licensed distiller meets certain requirements established by the board, such agreement may allow monthly revenue transfers for the licensed distillery. So what ABC did is work with them and come up with a process to make this work. There are 46 distilleries, 23 of them applied for the process, 16 of them were approved. 7 of them were not for whatever reason. One of them tends to be a constituent of mine, just said, oh, we missed a step and we got to go back and do it, but it's no big deal. And they are laid out in the manual for ABC. And let me just quickly say a couple of requirements. 6 consecutive months of accurate and timely accounting, full compliance with all aspects of the agreement, satisfactory compliance with ABC's internal audit, and no ongoing or pending enforcement action. So pretty basic stuff. Of the remaining 23, several of them just don't want to go through the process because it essentially amounts to just changing an accounting process. So the month you do it, the next month you'll have your money up front, but then after that, it's just the same. So you get like a one-time 30-day advance, right? And so some of them just don't want to deal with the accounting and have chosen not to do it. What we're doing with this bill is rather than making it mandatory for all 46 July 1, as Senator Peake's last bill would be, this just puts the requirements that they've laid out and are following in place so that if a distillery wants to do it and can meet those requirements I just discussed, they can be approved. If they don't want to mess with it, they can continue to operate as usual. But it does protect ABC from not having to do it to a distiller who may not be accurately or verifiably reporting or may have a compliance problem. So it keeps them from having to chase down money, really, and still gives the distillers an opportunity to participate if they so choose.
Madam Chair,
Senator Sproul.
is anyone from ABC here?
Yes, I was just going to call a representative. I was going to call a representative. Yes, you're the regulations chief, right?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, John Daniel with ABC.
My question, sir?
Yes, sir. There you
Senator
are.
Sproul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is he right? Is he telling the truth? He's a politician.
I think he wants to know whether I like you. Yeah, and the bill. This is, as Senator Mason said, this really just corrects the good work that Senator Peake did last year to more accurately reflect what we were asked to do, which is why there was a delayed effective date on Senator Peake's bill to work with the distillers that arrived at an end point that was good for us as well as for the distillers. So I think we've done that with this. I don't think there are any distillers who are unhappy with the program as we put it in place. So.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Anybody wishing to speak in favor or in opposition?
Talking.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. and we have to re-refer it to finance. So the motion was to report and re-refer to finance. Just a second. Okay, clerk, please open the roll.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee.
Very good. Okay, non-committee members would be Senator Ruff and Senator Donovan, but neither are here. So. You got me. Refer to. Okay, so I think I'm the only one left. Okay. Ms. Locke, would you like to share while I present? Save the best for last.
Okay, Senator Favela.
Okay, we took care of 117. Let's go to Senate Bill 156. It's the Fostering Futures Program. Actually, this program has been in effect. We had implemented it through budget language. And what it does is it allows foster youth who have aged out of the system. So they're 18 years of age. So when they're between the ages of 18 and 21, they will now be able to obtain federal support. They can continue to get Title IV payments to help them with living expenses or to help a foster family continue to provide housing and support until the child is 21. The condition is the child has to come up with an education plan or a job training plan. So it's really a safety net for our young people. It's allowing them to pursue their dream, allows them to get an education so they can really get a job that is self-sufficient. What this bill does is it codifies what we have been doing already as the result of budget language. And many people who are part of the system, Child Protective Services, JDR judges, they all want to see statutory language. So with that, Madam Chair and members, I would move that we pass Senate Bill 156. Oh, I have speakers. Well, thank you. I didn't know you stayed. Sure.
Those in support?
Yes. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Allison Gilbreth with Voices of Virginia's Children. Several of you may have seen youth on, where are we, Wednesday, who were a part of the foster care youth cohort. And when we asked them what was the best thing that the General Assembly has done to impact their lives, they said it was the Fostering Futures program. So I ask that you pass this bill for them.
Thank you.
Good morning, Cassie Cunningham with Children's Home Society. We also support the bill.
Thank you.
Valerie LaRue from Virginia Poverty Law Center. We also support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Amy Willard with Legal Aid Justice Center. I think back in 2012, Senator Favola's first year was when we first started working on this effort. So I'm very pleased to see the bill here today, to move it from the budget to the code. And I'm happy to see the legislature really shaping the code around the lived experiences of young people in foster care and not who we imagine they are or what they need. So hope you support the bill.
Thank you.
Good morning. Rebecca Morgan, Director of Middlesex Social Services, and with the Virginia League of Social Services Executives, we support the bill.
Thank you.
Before we go any further, and I apologize, things are moving so quickly.
Madam Chair, is anybody in opposition?
Senator Sproul, I was going to get to that.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we do have some amendments, and we wanted to clarify some language on the role of the JDR judge. They're technical in nature, but we needed to clarify them. You know, all these people are looking at the bill, and we were asked to make these clarifications. I'll ask the staff to go ahead and distribute the amendment.
Madam Chair, so there will be, and bear with me here because there's 7 of them, but since the bill is large, I broke them out into line amendments. They are technical. There's one that has a little bit of substance to it that I will explain at the end. So I'm going to roll through these quickly. The first line amendment is on line 475. After approve the, strike agreement and. On line 489, after hearing, strike the remainder of line 489 and through then on line 490, insert to be held within. The third is on line 490 after petition, period. Strike the remainder of line 490, all of lines 491 and 492, and through 16.1-267 on line 493, and insert the court may appoint counsel or a guardian ad litem for the program participant pursuant to 16.1-266. The fourth is on line 493. After may, strike the remainder of line 493 and through participant, comma, on line 494. The fifth is on line 513. After plan, strike at least 45, insert within 30. The sixth is on line 515. After hearing the first instance, insert to be held. And the seventh and final amendment is on line 841. After visit, strike or video conference. This is the amendment that had a somewhat substantive nature to it. And basically what we're talking about here is there's a federal requirement that a monthly visit has to be conducted with the participant by a service worker. Now, DSS has to have a 95% compliance rate with that required monthly visit. The Commission on Youth made an attempt to say, in an effort to meet that requirement, that we could have video conference monthly meetings. Well, that question was asked to the feds of, does a video conference satisfy the requirement in the same way that a face-to-face conference would? The answer was no, so we had to take it out of the bill.
Okay.
Fostering Futures, we draw down federal money for this, a large portion. So we're bound by many federal requirements.
So we need a motion on those 7 amendments. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt those 7 amendments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? So those amendments are adopted. Is there anyone in the audience opposed to the bill? Okay, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, I remember it was 2008, and I think Ann Holton, the First Lady, was very involved in this when I was in the House, and something similar to this. And I remember her striking a chord when she said these young people that are aging out at 18, it's like a cliff. They're gone. They go to school. They don't come home to Thanksgiving. I just thought it was great. What I want to know is this. Does this Fostering Futures program, do you envisage a situation where every one of these young people between 18 and 21 would take advantage of the support and the services that are afforded them? Because I'm thinking, why wouldn't they?
Well, we would hope they would, and their caseworker has 90 days before they age out to develop a plan with them, to talk to them and develop a plan. Now, some young people, as you know, you're a parent, when they're 18, they can't wait to get out on their own, and they're unaware of just how tough it is. If they don't get into the plan right away, they can come back in. Between the ages of 18 and 21. So that was a very positive thing about the federal program. So, because in the past, if they, left a program, they couldn't get back in, but this allows them to come back in.
One final question.
Senator
You said something just then, it's incumbent upon their caseworker to advise them of this program. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they'd have to work on a plan, and the plan has to be approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Any further questions? We have Senate Bill 156.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 156 be reported as amended. Please vote.
And me.
Barbara.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Just can't do that.
The bill is reported.
Thank you. Okay, now I have Senate Bill 178, Kinship Guardian Assistance. My bill actually is contained in part in the bill we just heard from Senator Mason. And what this does is it defines victive kin. So victive it would be a person who has a relationship with a young person, and the person's not a relative. And it says, for purposes of this section on line 366, relative means an adult who is related to the child by blood, marriage, or adoption, or victive kin. So it allows a victive kin to be part of this guardianship program. And it's just expanding the number of people who can step up and be a foster parent and be provide a loving home. So I respectfully ask that we pass Senate Bill 178.
Are there those here in support of the bill? Anyone in opposition?
Move to report.
Staff is,
Senator Hanger?
staff is talking to me. Is there amendment I didn't know, I was unaware of? Is-
Yeah, OES has been busy.
Madam Chair, so as Senator Favola pointed out earlier, we heard Senator Mason's bill earlier, Senate Bill 570. It had a substitute. These are the same amendments that were offered by the Virginia Supreme Court for that.
Okay.
Moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, so we have the substitute. Senator Hanger.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I was just going to interrupt the movement to say that I like this definition based on a personal experience. I have a number of grandchildren, and one of my sons had a foster child for some time, from 2 to 5 years old for a period of time, but an emotional attachment became there. So my wife still sometimes says we have one more grandchild than we actually do, but that child was placed back with the father when he got out of prison. So at that moment, we were a little uncertain about that, but hopefully that worked out.
You would have fit my definition. You would have been eligible for state funding and possibly federal funding. So, or at least your son would have.
As amended. Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt.
And
Okay.
refer to finance.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 178 as a substitute be adopted and re-referred to finance. All in favor, please vote.
– 14 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Madam Chair, the next bill is Senate Bill 297, and there is a line amendment on this bill. What it does is it establishes a Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Prevention Fund. I can explain the line amendment. I don't have it in front of me, but I go ahead and read it. I believe it just eliminates the specific Action Alliance has a potential grantee.
Madam Chair, the one line amendment on line 38, after 2, strike the remainder of line 38 and through of on line 39, and insert an organization that provides, which effectively removes the reference to the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance, and just inserts the blank organization language.
It's been moved and seconded that the amendment be adopted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. What this bill does is it really puts an emphasis on prevention. We want to establish a grant program to encourage nonprofit groups who are working in the community to provide educational and outreach programs for both preventing domestic violence and sexual assault, and then early intervention when necessary. It's something that the Sexual Assault Advisory Committee has discussed, and we think it's filling a gap because the federal funding for these programs is all based on intervention, and there's nothing that really addresses prevention. I did put a budget amendment in, so obviously this bill would have to go to the Finance Committee, but we really think it fits, it fills a gap in our safety net.
Are there those who wish to speak in support?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Favola, for carrying this. My name is Jonathan Iglesias. I am with the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance. Many of you know we represent the 65 sexual and domestic violence agencies across the state, and Senator Favola was asked to carry that on their behalf. As she mentioned, what this bill does is two things. First, it acknowledges the legislature's recognition of the impact of sexual and domestic violence on communities in Virginia, as well as demonstrates an ongoing commitment to shift the focus from intervention to prevention, which, in our opinion, really is the best form of victim services, preventing violence before it can occur. The second thing it does is it authorizes this new program that would hopefully subsequently have an appropriation to invest in sexual and domestic violence prevention efforts. Right now, we do receive a small amount of federal funds from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and Family Violence Prevention and Services Office, Department of Justice. And those essentially fund 16 out of our 65 programs statewide to do this work. What that work looks like is school-based education, work with families and parents on appropriate emotional development, decreasing risk for perpetration and victimization. It looks like building community coalitions to address this issue and seek out risk factors for perpetration in the community. And we also work, those communities who do have access to this prevention funding work in tandem with in-home visitors, with local departments of social services, and do all sorts of work that really is beneficial to rooting out sexual and domestic violence in our communities. I'm not going to go on and on about the incidents of violence, but what we do know is that this heavily impacts young folks, primarily those who experience violence, first experience it between the ages of 11 and 17. So those 16 out of our 65 programs who are doing this work in schools, with parents, with communities, are typically reaching younger people. And we believe that not only does this establish a pivot to look at reducing violence before it can occur, but it also alleviates us in terms of an economic burden and dealing with the aftermath of violence, with medical costs, with prosecution, and all these things. We really believe that it's time for Virginia to invest in a robust prevention infrastructure, and we know that many of you up here have invested in the intervention services that support and sustain our programs statewide, and we want to pivot to prevention. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
There's a question.
Yes. Do you all work with victim, witness, and Commonwealth attorneys in the JDR courts as well?
We do, yes. Okay. Yeah. And actually, I have to apologize. We, yesterday, I had a group of folks, advocates who were here for House Welfare where this was up, and we actually had Empower House at the table as well. We do have folks who are working in those court systems with victim witness, and all of our programs are in support of this.
Thank you.
I told him you would understand it without having a large
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Valerie LaRue from the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We work very closely with the legal aid organizations around Virginia. The biggest need for legal aid in our communities tends to be in the domestic relations area, and most legal aids are so swamped with requests for legal representation in the area of domestic violence and sexual assault and family law generally, that they limit the family law cases that they take mostly to those where domestic violence is a factor. So preventing domestic violence in the first place would enable our legal aids to have the capacity to help more people with matters relating to family law that do not touch on the issue of domestic violence. So we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here in opposition?
I move to report and refer to finance.
Moved and seconded that Senate Bill 297 be reported and re-referred to finance. All in favor, please vote. Who has to step? Okay.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
That bill is reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One last bill, Senate Bill 482. And this is this has to do with mortality review. As part of the DOJ agreement, the Department of Behavioral Health established a mortality review committee. And it's actually a developmental disabilities mortality review committee. And that committee does get reports from hospitals, nursing homes, physicians, providers across the Commonwealth when there has been a death. And what this bill does is, once this review committee identifies deaths that they want further information on, this bill gives the authority to that committee to go ahead and ask for further information on why the death happened, to look at some environmental factors, some medical factors, some social factors, looking at trends in a particular hospital. This is an administration bill. They believe this bill is necessary to fully implement the DOJ agreement.
Those in support?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, John Smina with the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. We support the bill. We think it'll provide an important tool for ensuring the quality review of services for people with developmental disabilities in the state.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Jenny Skatine with the Disability Law Center of Virginia, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone out there in opposition?
I do not believe, they told me this does not have a fiscal impact since the review committee is already in existence. This is just an additional authority.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 482 be reported. Please vote.
Fourteen ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that might conclude our docket.
Okay, I think we're done.
Committee rise.